Hey, welcome back, everyone, to another episode of the Educational AD Podcast. We'll be right back with today's guest, but first, let's hear from our podcast sponsors. We want to thank Hometown Ticketing for their support of the podcast. Hometown Ticketing is the leading digital ticketing provider to schools and colleges. You can find out more about what Hometown Ticketing can do for you and your program by going to hometownticketing.com and talk to their experts. Hometown Ticketing, simple and easy online ticketing. We also want to thank our newest sponsor, Gipper. Gipper is the way that coaches, schools, and athletic departments create world-class marketing content. Create custom branded content for your school's social media channels in seconds on any device and without needing any design experience. Go to Gipper.com for more information. And again, thanks to Gipper for joining us on the Educational AD Podcast. We also want to say thanks to Final Forms, the industry leader in registration. But Final Forms is more than just forms. Final Forms is a team, it's technology, and they provide schools with compliance, communication, and risk management solutions. Final Forms can help your stakeholders with things like mobile accessibility and has reminders for parents about policies and physicals and all the forms that athletes have. Final Forms can also help with team communication and attendance and even coaches certification. Okay. And for athletic directors, Final Forms can help with eligibility, with rosters, and all the forms that come across your desk. And it does this with secure language translation and ADA compliance. You know, it's time for you to talk to a team that's walked in your shoes. To take the next steps and find out what Final Forms can do for you, go to finalforms.com/Jake. That's finalforms.com/Jake to get started with Final Forms. We also want to thank Huddle. Remember, at Huddle, we power sports. More than 200,000 teams use Huddle to help their teams play better using video and analytics. Huddle's the complete performance platform with online tools and smart cameras. They've always had analytics, but there's so much more. Huddle's also built for every level of play, from club and youth teams all the way through high schools and colleges, and even the pros have used Huddle to help their athletes perform at the highest level. You're in pretty good company with over 6 million users, including your student athletes. If you want to find out more about what Huddle can do for you and your program and how your school can become a Huddle school, go to huddle.com and talk to their professionals. Remember, at Huddle, we power sports. We also want to say thanks to Athletic Surveys by Lifetrack. Athletic Surveys by Lifetrack are a quick, easy, and affordable way for you to collect comprehensive data that allows you to evaluate and improve your entire athletic program. Athletic Surveys by Lifetrack also connects you to the 95% of the parents and the student athletes that really love your program, and it gives them a voice to help demonstrate the importance that a positive athletic experience has for them. Go to athleticsurveys.com and check out their testimonials, and then give them a call at 1-800-738-6466, or you can email them at info@athleticsurveys.com to get started. If you've never used a survey to take the pulse of your parents or your student athletes, you're really missing out. Talk to the folks at Athletic Surveys by Lifetrack and let them help you take your athletic program from good to great. We also want to thank Wall of Fame by Vital Signs. You know, they're on a mission to bring your school's legacy to life. They have a variety of interactive touchscreen consoles and an entire library of templates to help recognize the athletic achievements of your students, both past and present. Let them help you showcase your school's diverse history and your proudest moments, and go to vitalsignswalloffame.com. You can also call them at 614-981-3589 or shoot them an email at sales@vitalsignswalloffame.com. That's sales@vitalsignswalloffame.com. Bring your school's legacy to life. We also want to say thanks to Sideline Interactive. Their indoor scoring tables and video boards can generate $10,000 or more every year and also create the ultimate game day experience for your athletes. Go to sidelineinteractive.com or call 832-786-0302 to schedule a live web demo. You can also email them at sales@sidelineinteractive.com for more information. That's sales@sidelineinteractive.com. See exactly what their fantastic products can do for you. Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of the Educational AD Podcast. We're staying right here in Florida today, and our guest is Jennifer Lockrem. I met Jennifer this past track season on the officials circuit. She's the head cross country and co-head track coach at University High School in Orange City, Florida, in the Orlando area. But she's also a certified track and field official. And so we're going to kind of talk about the coaching and the officiating today. But Jennifer, welcome to the podcast. Thank you for having me, Jake. Yeah. You and I had a chance to visit this spring at a number of our meets. And again, I got to see you in action as an official. But we always like to let our listeners have a chance to get to know our guests. So give us that 5-minute bio. Where were you born? Where'd you grow up? Went to school? And kind of how has your path led you to Orange City, Florida? Yeah, sure. It's probably everybody says this, but it's a little bit of an unconventional path to where you met me. I was actually born in Texas, but I've lived in Florida enough of my life to say that I'm from Florida. Grew up over on the West Coast and moved to Central Florida when I was a teenager. And I've lived here ever since. As an adult, that's where I raised my kids. I did not participate in team sports at all. When I was growing up, it just weren't that type of family. In high school, I went to a very small high school. My graduating class had 30 students, just to give you an idea of how small it was. So when they were starting the women's basketball team, anyone who tried out made the cut. So that was my experience with high school sports. And then the getting into coaching was just one of those right place at the right time. I had met another coach. She was actually the coach at University High School from its initiation. It's kind of a young high school. I think they're 11 years now. So for this area, when you're talking about the Land High School, it's been here for about 120 years. It's a newer school. But she had recently taken on the role of athletic director and was going to have to step away from coaching. And she had asked me repeatedly to try it out. So I finally agreed to one season of cross country, and you know how the rest of that goes. But she knew me just through running, actually not through coaching or teaching, which I know a lot of the coaches that I've interacted with and officials have met one another through the school system or administrative background. Ours was more of she had kind of an eye for who might be good with the kids. And that's been 7 years, and it was one of the best decisions I ever made. So no, any good athletic director is always on the lookout for that coaching talent, and it can come from different places. Talk a little bit about coming on board. Again, you had become a runner, obviously, but how was that coming on board in the coaching environment? Any surprises, or was it just a natural fit? You knew you found the right place. That's a good question, because my initial answer would be it was all surprises. But I do feel like pretty quickly on it felt like a natural fit. And it was more just the ability to interact with the athletes. And then the coaching side of it, the actual knowledge of the way that the meets go and your timelines and your training plans. All that I had to kind of scramble and learn myself. She was involved in a lot of roles at that time. And as much as it created an intense amount of stress the first couple of seasons,
I can only thank her for saying, here's this program, good luck. I mean, that was the extent of what I was given. So to have to learn all of that on my own, it made me the coach who I am. It truly benefited me.
Yeah, well, obviously you're doing a good job because they're keeping you around. Okay.
Or they're desperate. But,
Yeah. And you're branching out into the world of officiating. So, we're going to talk about that later. For our listeners, we're visiting today with Jennifer Lockrem. She is a track and field official here in the state of Florida. She's also the head cross country coach, co-head track coach at University High School in Orange City, Florida. We're going to take a quick break, hear from one of our sponsors, but we'll be right back. Please stay with us. This is the Educational AD Podcast. We want to say thanks to Gipper, our newest sponsor on the Educational AD Podcast. Gipper is the way that coaches, ADs, schools can create world-class marketing content with custom branded ads for your school's social media channels. You can do it in seconds on any device and without needing any design experience. It's so easy that even I can do it. We want to thank Gipper for their support. They're going to have a brand new commercial for us soon, but go to Gipper.com, tell them that you heard about it on the Educational AD Podcast, and see what they can do for you and your school's program. Welcome back, everyone, to the Educational AD Podcast. We're visiting today with Jennifer Lockrem. She's a high school coach in Florida, but we met, our paths crossed on the officiating trail, and that's what I want to talk about now. Jen, obviously, there's a lot more coaches than there are officials, and having coached for a long, long time, I know that coaches always think they know the rules, and many times they do, but many times they don't. I'm curious, what was the tug? What got you to come over to the dark side of being a track and field official?
Well, first, I wouldn't necessarily call it a dark side, but maybe I'm not jaded and crusty yet. I find it novel still. But you're touching on just a little bit of my experience as far as I didn't have a lot of experience in this realm growing up with the track and field or cross country. So I just had a strong desire to learn every bit of it that I could to better my athletes and better myself as a coach. And along the way, that involves learning the rules. It involves knowing the ins and outs of each event at a track and field meet, which, as you know, as a new coach, what you don't know could fill a stadium, right? Like you felt like an imposter every time I showed up. And then probably my second season in, I was already being asked to unofficially officiate some events. That's just the nature of some of these meets. And I'm just not the type of person or coach that's going to do that without doing it 100%. So kind of immersing myself in learning from other coaches. I actually did the USATF level 1, which was a nice background to each kind of event, but it obviously doesn't give you that officiating experience. I did the level 2 and just made some really good connections there. And at that point, that was when some of the connections that I made started talking to me about officiating. And even if it wasn't to actually officiate events, it was just like you said, most coaches don't necessarily know the rules. And I think your athletes are at a bit of a deficit if they don't know the rules, if they're showing up to a meet or an event and they don't know all the ins and outs of it. So really I started learning the official rules and the officiating side of it, just as part of the process of bettering myself as a coach for my athletes' experience. And then one of the coaches that I met, he actually saw me raking pits at a meet and said, if you're going to do this, let's at least get you through the process. So Ken Brahman really pushed for to take the test, to go to the clinics and become an official. And again, it was all under the umbrella of, even if you never actually officiate, least you know the rules. It's a great resource, but I think deep down he knew that I was, once I know this, I have a deep love for rules and for for seeing things move smoothly and efficiently. And I think it betters the sport for everyone involved if there's qualified officials and coaches at the events. So if I can be a part of that, that was something that was appealing to me. So it's a pretty slippery slope in getting the certification, and then all of a sudden you're at every meet. So
Yeah, like most sports, track and field is no different. There's a shortage of officials. And so, when, whoever we is, when we find someone that has that interest and even a little bit of background, but mostly interest, we're going to do everything we can to help them along the way. You talked about, taking the exam in Florida. You have to register on the FHSA website, our state association. You have to pass the rules exam, which for our listeners is an open book exam, but it's still, if you got to go through that book and make sure that you are answering correctly. And then you're out there, you're officiating meets. I think the first meet that we met, my wife and I were working at Lake Highland Prep in Orlando, and you were there. So that's a district level meet. It's kind of a playoff game. How was that? Coming in at at say that level and being an official.
Yeah, like I said, it's when you're unofficially in charge of some of the events, it's a lot more relaxed, and people are a little more forgiving with you messing up here and there and having to ask a lot of questions. But once you get to the district and the regional level, I know for me, I care enough that I actually felt that pressure, which is a good thing. You don't want to go into it and be complacent. I really wanted it to be 100% experience for the coaches and the athletes who were there. It's a big deal to get to that point, and especially to advance beyond that. And I certainly didn't want any action on my part to negatively affect their experience. So doing it live and doing it at the district to regional to beyond level, I think if you're not a little bit nervous, then then maybe you're not, especially as a new official. If you don't care enough to be nervous, then but it's good. I mean, it's a full immersion, and I wouldn't have done it any other way. I
Yeah.
appreciated the experience.
I'm going to go ahead and put you on the spot again for our listeners. I was a lead official for an event at our state track meet, and there's a very small group of people at our state association level that choose all the officials. So, I've been doing this for a long time. And so I was very excited to be a lead. Jen, for you, your first year of officiating, obviously you impressed some people along the way. You got selected to work at the state meet. So take our listeners through that experience. How was that working those 4 days?
I loved it. And like I said, maybe that's, ask me 10 years from now and maybe I won't have the same reaction. But for me to be able to be in the midst of what's my sport right now, that was amazing. And I know you were there, and when they're asking you to stay a little bit longer to umpire some of the running events, I mean, I'm a distance coach, so you're gonna ask me to, beg me to stand at the state meet and watch the people on the track breaking the record. Yeah, I'm gonna do that. Like that's so again, like I said, that at that point, at least I'd had a few district and regional meets under my belt, so I felt a little bit more confident in my abilities. And honestly, you had touched on the open book and knowing the rules. It's set up to where as long as you know those rules, you really can't go wrong. So I had a good understanding of that, and I had excellent support from the other officials and umpires. I mean, it was an amazing experience all around. So.
Yeah, I think our group does an outstanding job of supporting each other and helping each other. Very collegial atmosphere. So glad you had a good time, and looking forward to seeing you back next year.
Absolutely.
For our listeners, once again, we're visiting today with Jennifer Lockrem. She's a head cross country and co-head track coach at University High School in Orange City, Florida. Also a track and field official here in our state. We're going to take another quick break, but we'll be back. Please stay with us. This is the Educational AD Podcast. We also want to say thanks to Final Forms, the industry leader in registration. But Final Forms is more than just forms. Final Forms is a team, it's technology, and they provide schools with compliance, communication, and risk management solutions. Final Forms helps your stakeholders with things like mobile accessibility, and it has reminders for parents about policies, about physicals, and all the forms that come with having an athlete in the house. Final Forms can also help with team communication and attendance, even certification management for coaches. And for athletic directors, Final Forms can help with eligibility, with rosters, and all the reports that come across your desk. And it does this with secure language translation and ADA compliance. You know, it's time for you to talk to a team that's walked in your shoes. To take the next steps and find out what Final Forms can do for you, go to finalforms.com/Jake. That's finalforms.com/Jake to get started with Final Forms. Welcome back to the Educational AD Podcast. Again, our guest today is Jennifer Lockrem, high school coach, high school official. Jen, one of the things we ask our guests goes back to this idea of mentorship in coaching and being in athletics. Leadership, mentorship is so important. None of us get here on our own. So who are some of the mentors that you've had in your career that have kind of helped you along the way? The expression I always use is, I still hear those voices in my head. So whose voice do you still hear?
So when you ask, the first thing that comes to mind is actually fairly negative, but I think it's driven me to be the coach that I am. But my high school coaching experience was somewhat brief, but it was a person that shouldn't have been in the role that he was in. So it was pretty negative for everybody who was on the team. And you can take that and say, I never want to participate in team sports, and I never want to be a coach, or you can say, I never want to be that coach. So when I first started coaching, I did hear a lot of the way that he would talk to the athletes and the way that he presented himself and spoke to parents, and knew that I wanted to do the opposite. So that was kind of, I wouldn't call it a mentor, but it was definitely an influence that I wouldn't have chosen, but it drove me to be the type of coach that I wish that I had had. Beyond that, I think I had mentioned the athletic director that hired me. She was the cross country and track coach since the school's inception, and she's recently returned to coach track and field with me. Lisa Eggert, she's coached at the college level. She was a collegiate athlete. She's just well-rounded. She recently took the officials exam as well, so we're just trying to actually get her to the meets. But she's just got that knack when you see her interact with the kids, that you say, well, of course you're a coach. I mean, that's just what you're meant to be. So she inspires me, even if she wasn't coaching now. Her influence on our school's sport would have inspired me, but the fact that I get to work with her on a daily basis throughout the track season is a constant learning and just an incredibly positive experience. I mean, it's there's nothing like being excited to go to you can't even call it work. You know, it's fun every day, because you're working with somebody that's that incredibly human. And then I think I had also mentioned Ken Brahman, who just, he'll talk to anybody and he'll tell his stories. And I think everybody's met Ken, but it's a incredibly unique and special experience when he takes the time to get to know you and to encourage you in the sport. I definitely wouldn't be officiating without his influence. But I think one of the most important things that he's always instilled is to never stop learning. he's been doing this 50 years. He's had athletes at the state meet for 50 years and continues to look up articles, new tricks and new tips and what new equipment are people using and how can we better coach. So if someone who's been doing this 50 years is still learning, that's obviously something that I should be doing as well. So I'm very grateful for those influences.
Well, I really appreciate you sharing. And the first example you gave, that's, I don't want to say it was fairly common, but it's not unusual. A lot of people, we all have a purpose in life, and some people's purpose is to serve as a bad example. I can look back at a couple of coaches that I had back in the day, and upon reflection, you just go, this person should have never coached. At the time, it was, again, I'm a lot older than you. At the time, it was, it just, you either liked your coach or you didn't like your coach. It was never a question of, oh, I'm not going to play because, Coach Smith is coaching basketball this year.
Right.
It was just, you played, and this guy or this gal was the coach. Hopefully, as the years have gone on, in our profession, we're doing a better job of helping coaches, coach our kids. So appreciate you sharing those stories. Okay. I'm sure some of my athletes look back and say, God, that guy was a knucklehead.
Yeah, I mean, you're gonna clash. That's not. I'm not looking for everybody to like me, but it's just more of the fundamentals of being a coach who inspires someone to love the sport, and sets them off for the rest of their life with valuable lessons. I mean, that's
exactly. We talk about that, and it needs to be more than just talking, is that we're using sport to, help kids have a great experience and go off and do, other things. Very few of the kids we coach are going to be, playing at that next level. So, great stuff. Great example. Appreciate you sharing. Once again, for listeners, our guest today is Jennifer Lockrem, high school coach, high school official. We're going to take another quick break, but please stay with us. This is the Educational AD Podcast. We also want to say thanks to Huddle. Remember, at Huddle, we power sports. Over 200,000 teams, including some of the best in the world, use Huddle to help their teams play better using video and analytics. Huddle's the complete performance platform. They have online tools, smart cameras. They've always had analytics, but there's so much more. Huddle's also built for every level of play, from club and youth teams all the way through high school and college programs. And even the pros use Huddle to help their athletes perform at the highest level. You're in pretty good company with over 6 million users, including your student athletes and the coaches of the teams you're trying to get to recruit your kids. If you want to find out more about what Huddle can do for you and your program and how your school can become a Huddle school, go to huddle.com and talk to their professionals. Remember, at Huddle, we power sports. Welcome back, everyone, to the Educational AD Podcast. Jen, one question that we always ask our guests has to do with this idea of sharing best practices. So I'm going to put you on the spot again. You've been at your school now for a number of years, and when you can take a step back and look at it objectively, or maybe with equal parts pride and humility, what are some things that you think you guys do particularly well that would come under this heading of best practices? Do you have anything you can share with us?
a couple things. So since I've been there have been 3 different athletic directors. So I'm only going to speak to my current athletic director, only because, previously it doesn't matter much, because with each athletic director also came a different principal, different administrators. So I will say, as a general rule, just this is something that I appreciate. And I didn't realize that our school was somewhat unique in this respect until I talked to a few other coaches. But we're big on compliance, part of the state association, part of the various jurisdictions, and compliance is important to my athletic director, and it's important to the administration. It's always been important to me. And so to have the support of administration that also kind of drives that into us, that I don't care if you like it or not. This is the rules that are set in place, and they're there for a good reason. And we're good with that. We're good with paperwork and ice baths and AEDs and all those little things that make a big difference to me. So I appreciate how strong we are in the compliance and adhering to the rules that are in place. And with that respect, I would say I get a lot of support from my athletic director. And I liken it to being at a meet and having an issue, and the meet referee is always going to back you. You know that they're always going to be in your corner. So as long as I'm following those rules and being compliant, I know that my athletic director is always going to back me. So if there's ever an issue with a parent or disgruntled athlete or another coach, I feel like our school definitely backs the support. The staff, they're very supportive in that way. And like I said, these are things that I take for granted because I've been there for a while and I've just appreciated them. But when I have the experience to talk to other coaches, that's not always the case. So I feel like it's important. Like I said, they expect us to stick to the rules, and if we're doing that, then they're supporting us in that. So
Yeah, as an athletic director, I can certainly echo the importance of that, having the coaches, buy in and follow, not because they're being made to, but because they understand they want to make sure that you don't become, I share this with our coaches. I would say, we're not going to be that school, that school that's getting in trouble or doing these things. And very fortunate to have great coaches, on our staffs that embrace that ideal. You're right. We don't want to be that school. So it's great that you've got that leadership, number one, and, the backing to, when somebody might question you, a parent or a kid, say, hey, this is the rule. This is how we roll. Okay.
yeah.
Having been there for 7 years, and you shared kind of the circumstances that you came on board, what are some changes maybe that you've seen from maybe when you first came on board? We did it this way, but now we're doing it a slightly different way, trying to do it better. Anything stick out for you?
Again, just in the changes in the personnel, the people that were previously in the roles had a lot of experience with sport and with school and a little bit of administration. But our current athletic director has been in the athletic director role both in Florida and Ohio for a couple of decades. So she's kind of got it down to a little bit of a science. That doesn't mean that everything's perfect. In some cases, it's a lot more of I'm going to buy pizzas for the whole team and we're going to have fun, and others it's we're going to have to save every penny and let's make sure that you hand sew your own uniforms, whatever. No, not necessarily to that level, but each one of them has a different approach to how they're going to be in that role. But what hasn't wavered is that support, and like I said, I feel like I'm lucky in that respect that I respect and support them, and they're always going to do that for me. So
we're going to do this at the end of the podcast, but if one of our listeners wanted to reach out and pick your brain a little bit about, coaching or officiating or even how you do things, what's the best way that they can get in touch with you?
Probably the email address that I provided you. So Coach Lockrem, it's my last name, LOCKREM @gmail.com. And I'm one of those people that's pretty receptive to emails and texts, and I'm always willing to talk the sport. So,
okay. Again, Jennifer Lockrem, head cross country coach, co-head track coach at University High School in Orange City, Florida. Also a FHSA certified track official. We're going to take another break, but we'll be back with some more. This is the Educational AD Podcast. We also want to say thanks to Sideline Interactive for their support. Sideline Interactive's indoor scoring tables and video boards can not just only generate funds for you, but they also create the ultimate game day experience for your athletes. Go to sidelineinteractive.com and schedule a live web demo and see their tables and boards in action. You can also email them at sales@sidelineinteractive.com for more information. That's sales@sidelineinteractive.com. Welcome back, everyone, to the Educational AD Podcast. Jennifer, one of our longtime questions has revolved around this idea of athletic directors or coaches and leaders just trying to do a better job with their stakeholders, their community. So again, I'm going to put you on the spot here. How can a leader, an AD, a head coach, do a better job of being socially aware for their kids? Do you have any advice for us?
So two things come to mind. One is not as appealing, but I kind of had to force myself to do it. So I'll start with the more appealing one. And it's spending time with the athletes, especially outside of the sport. An example I use at the AD level is the AD doesn't just sit in the golf cart, 100 meters away. They're in the stands and they're talking to kids and they're commenting on how they've painted their chest. And it's just something that I've noticed that if they build that relationship with the kids, especially outside of reward, they're not stressed out, that the kids are there to enjoy themselves. And here's an adult in authority who's just there to talk to them. They feel like, I feel like the athletes build that relationship to where they can share things with the athletic director, and in turn get the athletic director's advice on issues that might be outside of the sport. So I'm impressed with our athletic debate. You're going to be there anyway. Don't just be the figurehead. Get involved, talk to them, build that relationship, and kind of the social events are going to fall into place when you're doing that. The other side of it is immersing yourself somewhat in social media, which I have a strong love-hate relationship with social media. I've been able to not be a part of it for most of my life, but I do recognize that being in this role, it does help to keep a pulse on what's happening in these kids' lives, whether they necessarily realize it or not. But when you're catching snippets of conversations that they're having, that's something that's on their mind. And if you have no clue what they're talking about, you're immediately at a deficit. So not necessarily interacting with them on social media. I have a hard and fast rule about that. As long as they're my athletes, we don't follow each other. But knowing what's going on in the world, having enough of a social media presence that when your kids are even having a conversation with each other and try to draw you into it, that you're not the clueless adult.
No, you mentioned social media. I'm going to go ahead and follow that thread a little bit. In the last, let's say 5 years, and it's probably been longer than that, really been a very aggressive push. Some of our sponsors are involved in that, for coaches and ADs to embrace and use social media to promote the kids, to promote the teams and the programs. And there is certainly a very positive side to that. At the same time, as you alluded to, it can be a love-hate relationship. I keep doing this to you. You're going to hate me. Can you think of something from the positive end of it, with, say, your social media, where you saw, wow, this really helped the kid, or this really helped our program? Can you think of an example here in the last couple seasons?
Sure. On a basic level, videos that I may never have seen, whether from other coaches' toolboxes or performances, that I've been able to share with my team via social media. So without someone else using that platform and sharing that knowledge, it's not something that I would have found in a book. So I would say that's a positive aspect of it. It's all part of the learning process. And here I can say I found this on Instagram and immediately share it with my kids. I would use it for that.
No, and again, that's one of those positive things. There's just so much material out there now, online. And I'm showing my own, ignorance of social media platforms. But we have an AD here in Florida, and she does a great job And she's kind of a TikTok guru. She takes TikToks of her coaches, of her teachers, of her kids, and posts them. And the kids love it. And it's a way for her to stay connected, to the kids and the coaches, and also promote her program. One of her TikToks got like, 200,000, views. So, that's her high school, that's her coaches, that's her kids. So there is a very positive aspect to it. Again, for our listeners, we're visiting today with Jennifer Lockrem. She's a high school coach. She's a high school official, and we're going to get some more wisdom from her. Let's take another quick break. This is the Educational AD Podcast. We also need to thank Wall of Fame by Vital Signs. They are on a mission to bring your school's legacy to life. They have a variety of interactive touchscreen consoles and an entire library of templates to help recognize the athletic achievements of your students, both past and present. Let them help you showcase your school's diverse history and your proudest moments, and go to vitalsignswalloffame.com. You can also call them at 614-981-3589 or shoot them an email at sales@vitalsignswalloffame.com. Let them help you bring your school's legacy to life. Welcome back, everyone, to the Educational AD Podcast. Jennifer, we're going to stay on this topic in a different fashion. One of our questions we ask is, how can a coach or an athletic director help kids to develop toughness? 100 years ago, when I was in high school, our coaches would say, "Come on, Jake, you got to be tough." And, we knew what they meant. But I think over the years, we have learned much better ways to communicate those ideas to our student athletes, which is a very good thing. But again, this is me talking. I think toughness is an important quality for sports and for life. So my question to you is, how can we help kids to develop toughness? Can you help us here?
It's a great question. And like you said, from the times that we were in school until now, a lot of that culture has changed. But I think developing resiliency or toughness, however you want to phrase it, is an important value. I'm going to take the easy route and say that I'm a distance coach, and anyone who's coming out for my sport, that's a tough kid. We start conditioning actually Monday for our cross country season, and being in Central Florida, we're not going to have a run that's less than 80 degrees on any day. So any kid that's even showing up for that, they've got a tough side to them already. So the training part of it, I do just encourage the fact that they're even there, that if this was easy, everybody would be doing it. So the fact that they're even showing up for a sport that involves, I know it's cliche, but every other sport's punishment as their chosen sport, that's a tough kid. When we get to the racing side of it, early on, my kids roll their eyes at this now, but and sure, in a very loving way. But I developed the race day rule that you are allowed to walk during a cross country meet, but if it's for more than 3 seconds, I'm calling the paramedics, and you have to explain to the ambulance and your parents and every administrator there why the paramedics are there, because you felt tired and decided to walk during a 5K. So I don't get a lot of walkers, but that's just the, kind of instilling in them that you're here, you need to show up, and you're here to race. Obviously, if they are in distress, I would call a paramedic, and it wouldn't be in a joking way. But same thing in the sport of track and field. Those kids they're a little bit different. I mean, they're built to be tough, and that's usually what I try to instill upon them at the end of season, that this is something that they can take into the rest of their lives, that it's not that this sport wasn't hard for them. It was that they mentally and physically recognized the difficulty of it and continued on. And that's a resilient human being. If you can do that, if you can race over mud and hills and rocks for more than a lot of people will run in their entire life, and go back and do it the next weekend. There's not much you can't take on. So just kind of allowing them to recognize that they were already a little bit tougher than most humans when they started, and the fact that they stuck with it is just building onto that.
I love the way you talked about that process of explaining, the parameters of competition. And also you use that term, they recognize the mental and physical, challenges, and, help them understand, well, this is what toughness means in this particular environment. And, having been, married to a cross country coach for a very long time, I understand. I've seen those kids out there, and our youngest daughter ran cross country too. So definitely those kids are tough. Wrestlers are tough. Cheerleaders are tough. There's
Yeah,
toughness
absolutely.
in all of our displays of sport and athletics. But I think you hit on the key part is, kind of defining what toughness means and then explaining it, letting the kids recognize and understand it. Very
And
cool
take
stuff.
that into beyond the sport. I think there's so much more to that than just I raced hard in this 1600 meter today. It was my stomach felt terrible and it was 90 degrees. 10 years down the road, they'll draw from that experience. They'll recognize that they did something hard and hopefully apply that to other situations in a
Oh,
positive.
absolutely. There's no question about that. Well, Jen, this has been really cool spending some time with you. We got to talk a little bit during the track season, but many times we were doing different events, but we're not done yet. We always like to wrap up with what we call the athletic director's toolbox. Now, you're not an athletic director, but you certainly know your way around the world of athletics. We're going to take a quick break, and we're going to hear from Athletic Surveys by Lifetrack, who sponsor the athletic director toolbox segment. When we come back, I'm going to ask Jen Lockrem what she would put into a new athletic director's toolbox. Please stay with us. This is the Educational AD Podcast. We want to thank Athletic Surveys by Lifetrack for sponsoring the AD Toolbox segment. Athletic Surveys by Lifetrack are a quick, easy, and affordable way for you to collect comprehensive data that allows you to evaluate and improve your entire athletic program. Athletic Surveys by Lifetrack also connects you to the usually 95% of the parents and the student athletes that really love your program. And it gives them a voice to help demonstrate the importance that a positive athletic experience has for them. Go to athleticsurveys.com and check out their testimonials, and then give them a call at 1-800-738-6466, or you can email them at info@athleticsurveys.com to get started. If you've never used a survey to take the pulse of your parents or your student athletes, you're really missing out. Talk to the folks at Athletic Surveys by Lifetrack and let them show you how to take your athletic program from good to great. Once again, for listeners, we've been visiting with Jennifer Lockrem. She's the head cross country coach and co-head track coach at University High School in Orange City, Florida. Also a track and field official here in our state association. But right now, I'm going to challenge her to send out a brand new AD or a brand new coach. But I'm only going to let her put 3 things in their toolbox. Jen, what 3 items are going to go in your athletic director toolbox?
So I know it's touchy because we're coming from private schools, public schools, 1A schools, 4A schools, but money is a factor. So I think budgeting is a huge key in successful athletic directing. Knowing what you have to work with and appropriating it in a way that benefits all the way down to the athletes. Oftentimes I've seen issues with sports and seasons that shouldn't have happened if money was appropriated correctly. Now, this is coming from a coach, not an athletic director, so I fully recognize the challenges associated with that. But from my perspective, it's a huge key to being successful in that role and being successful for your teams.
No, absolutely. There's no question, having that awareness of what the budget is and how to, make it even better.
It sounds like a duh thing, but it really is. There's so much wrapped up in that role that sometimes it can take you by surprise. You go, oh, we don't have any more money. And then just something I touched on earlier is spending time with the athletes. I think once you get to the administrative level, it's easy to stay outside of it all and just kind of watch from the outside. And I think being part of their lives and interacting with them, the coaches notice that, the parents notice that, and certainly the athletes notice that. So I know everybody's pressed for time, but again, if you're the administrator on duty at an event anyway, talk to the kids, buy them a soda, have some, spend a few minutes with them. It seems like a simple concept, but I don't often see it. And I do appreciate it when I do see it.
Again, it's another spot on thing that, sometimes the young AD and even the older ones, you can get so wrapped up in the minutia of the sport that you forget that it's about the kids. It's about those relationships. Absolutely. Okay. Those are two great ones. You got one more for us?
Yeah, I would say shadowing every team at least one day. Again, athletic directors come from all backgrounds, just like your coaches. Some of them are former coaches. Some of them don't have any experience coaching. They just have good experience administrating. You might know the sport at a fundamental level, but shadowing your coach and how they approach their team and how they interact with their team. You don't have to know all the rules. You don't have to know all the kids' names, or take a sport like track and field or baseball, and you might not get a couple things wrong. It's fine. But just for an example, I had one of the athletic directors that pointed out he liked my coaching style and mentioned that more than once. And I finally did bring up to him that he'd never seen me coach ever. Like, he'd never spent the time with me or my kids. And I know that I'm doing a fine job and my kids' performances reflect that. But I think it's important to know your coaches and to shadow what they do and how they speak to the kids, and not to reprimand them, but sometimes that might be the case. But just to, if someone asks, you can say, this coach has this philosophy and this team, this is their routine, and I know this, and I think, just like I said, spend a day with each of your coaches and each of the teams.
Again, you're 100% right. Our job as ADs, we're there to help the coaches so they can help the kids. And if we can get out there and help the kids a little bit in some way, that's true. But you can't do that in your office. You can't do that, as you said, in the golf cart. You got to get out there. The kids see it and the coaches see it. And for the athletic directors who do take your advice and get out there, the rewards and the benefits are just, you can't put a price tag on that. It's just so impactful for the program.
Absolutely. My athletic director enjoyed a cross country meet so much more when she actually knew what was happening, knew a couple of the kids' names and knew how far we were running and what our warm-up routine was, just by spending that, half an hour with us on a practice day. When she had to be at a meet, now it's exciting. Now you know what's going on.
Yeah. And again, it's, as the AD, in a way, it's your team. So you should be doing everything that you can to help the coach, help those kids out. Great stuff. Jen, if one of our listeners wants to reach out, pick your brain a little bit more about coaching or your school, or even becoming an official, how can they get a hold of you?
Sure. It's Coach Lockrem at gmail.com. So Lockrem is Lockrem. Okay. Like I said, I'm glad to answer questions and always looking to make new connections and learn.
There you go. Jennifer Lockrem, University High School. Thanks so much for being on the podcast today.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
For our listeners, the Zoom recordings of all of our interviews are uploaded to the Educational AD Podcast YouTube channel. We appreciate you listening today. Come back just about every day for new content on the Educational AD Podcast. We'll see you next time. And we want to say thanks to Hometown Ticketing, the leading digital ticketing provider to schools and colleges. You can find out more about what Hometown Ticketing can do for you and your school by going to hometownticketing.com and talk to their experts. Hometown Ticketing, simple and easy online ticketing. Thanks again for listening to the Educational AD Podcast. We'll see you next time. Everybody have a great day.